Hey folks, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to create a simple JavaScript calculator. Why simple? Because it is just going to allow you to do simple calculations such as addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. There won't be percentages or you won't be able to calculate the board mass like keeping the bracket and doing those operations. This is a very simple calculator where it allows you to do all the four basic operation of mathematics, that is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And we are having this cute calculator here where we can do division, we can also do multiplication, we can do some subtraction, and obviously the addition. And we can do some different long calculations as well. So let's get started. So the first thing we will do, obviously, we will go ahead and we'll create a new folder. We'll call it calculator. And inside this, we will be creating our index.html file. Let's go ahead and we know the drill. So let's add the boilerplate code. Let's call it simple calculator. And let's add the style sheet in which we'll be adding the styles later on. And in the body, we'll be first adding a div with wrapper class. Inside this div, we'll create another div with class calculator block. So this will be the block which will be containing the calculator. Inside this, we will create the top block inside which we'll create the title block. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, we'll define a top block div. Inside this, we'll again define a div with title block. And in here, I would like to have a paragraph tag in which I'll be creating class as title. And here we'll be writing, it's a JavaScript calculator. So let's call it JavaScript calculator. The next thing we would like to do is we want to create an output screen. So for that, we will again create a div. And this div will be adding a class called output block. In this, we will add another div with class result. So this div will be responsible for showing the calculation. So this div will be responsible for showing the calculation what user is performing on the calculator. So let's go ahead and add another paragraph tag inside which will set the value to 0. And also we would like to have a div which will record the history of what user has clicked on the screen so that user has a fair amount of idea that what operation he's performing. So that's that. Once we are done with that, we'll go outside top block and we will now code for the buttons. So let's code for the buttons. So again, we'll create a div with ID buttons and a class of the same buttons. Inside this, we will create all the buttons. So it will be all clear, clear everything, division, multiplication, all the numbers from 0 to 9, equal sign button, the dot sign button, and the other stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me add a button with class, we'll add a class red to it because this button will be clear button. And the next button we will be adding would be with class red again, but this will be clear earlier button. And also let's give the buttons some value. So we'll be giving this the value of AC because it is that. And this will be having a value of CE. So there are two buttons. Next button we would like to add is for, so don't add class right now. Let's go ahead and add a value and it will be a forward slash. That means it's a divide. Similarly, we'll add a, not sure what class we are going to add to this one, but the value is gonna be a multiplication. and the sign is going to be X. So we got that. And so for the reference, let's bring back our calculator UI so that we have a fair amount of idea that how the numbers should be there. Okay, so we got our AC, CE, division and multiplication button here. So this is one block. Similarly, we'll be creating another block of 4 buttons, but those buttons will be 7, 8, 9 and minus. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll put the value of 7, 8, 9 and minus to it, and accordingly we'll be adjusting the text as well. So it will be 7, this is going to be 8, this is going to be 9, and this one is minus. Same stuff for the next row where we have 4, 5, 6 and plus. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, we don't want to do the red here because these are digits. So let's give the digit class to these buttons, and this one is going to be 4, this one is going to be 5. The value also we need to change accordingly. This will be 6, 5, and one more time we'll be doing it. 1, 2, 3. Let's update the text. 2 and 1, and the sign is gonna be equal sign, and this, let's give this class button equal, equal. And at the bottom we would like to have 3 buttons, and those will be this 0, this dot, and we will be adding a button here, but since we are adjusting the CSS style of this button which we added here, the button equal, so we'll be hiding this button. So there will be a button, but we'll be just hiding that button, so it is not going to show up on the UI. Let's go ahead and do that. So we need to add 3 buttons again, and this time will be 0. Why I'm doing btn 0 and not digit for 0 is because 0 is going to take space of 2 button size. So that's why I have decided to give it a different class so that we can style it differently. Next is going to be a dot, and the value of this is going to be dot. So I don't want to give any class to this button. And similarly, the last class is going to be an equal, but this is just like a placeholder we are creating. So what I want to do is, like, I want to say hide, so that in the CSS class we will add the appropriate styles to hide this button, although it is gonna be there, but it will not be used. And the button equal is going to be of size 2, so it will overlap on this one. So let's go ahead and save this, and we have added HTML only. There's no JavaScript or CSS involved right now. So if I go ahead and I open this, this is not looking at all like what we are planning to build. But hang on there with me. This is the structure which we are going to have. So this is the name of the calculator. This is the result. This is the history. These are the buttons. Obviously they all are right now lined up because they are buttons and they all are like one next to each other, but we'll be adding CSS and we'll be aligning them to look like a calculator. So let's go ahead and start adding the CSS style first. Let's go to our project folder and we'll add a style.css class. And we want to make sure that we already have a reference to that in our HTML head part, so that as we make changes to the CSS, we will be seeing those changes on the UI. So let's go ahead and add a wildcard style. And here I'm going to add the padding 0 and the margin 0. That's the first style. So you can see now the gap between the buttons have been reduced and they are like squished together so that they look better. The next thing I would like to do is I would like to style the HTML itself. So I'll set the height of HTML to 100%. Next thing I would like to do is I would like to use a font family, and the font family I will be using right now is what I'm gonna do is I'm going to import a couple of fonts from Google APIs, which we'll be using to make sure that our calculator looks more like a calculator with the fonts. So I'm importing the graduate family font from there, which we'll be referencing here. So instead of Courier new, let's go ahead and call it graduate. And the rest will be like Courier monospace. Next thing we would like to do is we have a calculator block class. So let's go ahead and decorate this one. So we'll add a couple of style to this class, and just to make sure that this is class, let's add a dot next to it. Let's go ahead and add styles to this block. So the block appears like a calculator box. So now I added the width, height, background color, position, top, bottom, right, left properties, as well as margin and some border radius. So now you can see now our calculator is taking some shape, and now we have a nice gray colored box inside which are all the calculator buttons and elements are tucked nicely. So let's go ahead and add some more styles. We can add some box shadow as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Next we'll do is like we will take this top block, which is going to be this part, and we'll be adding style to that. So let's select this CSS style and add styles to this. So now you can see that we have nice light charcoal color on the top part of our calculator, but this is not looking that good. So what we'll do is now, again, we'll go ahead and add some box shadow to it to give it like the 3D effect. Add that in here and save it. And now you can see we have nice edges. Now we have a good finished look. So the next thing I would like to add is a title block and title. So let's go ahead and select this, and we'll add the style. And this will add text line to center and the font size to 25 pixel. Save that. Okay. Now this is looking good and taking good shape. Another thing we would like to do is we will take the top block and inside that title class. So we will be updating that with a color of light color. Let's give it the same color, and we'll give some padding. Next, we would like to decorate this one, the output block. So let's go ahead and select that, and let me minimize these styles so that have more working area with us. So now we'll be adding styles to output block. In output block, let's go ahead and add a background color. Again, a lighter color, or maybe a cream color we can use. So let's go ahead and add some cream color hex number to that, and we'll have a nice border of 5 pixel, which will be solid, and let's bit darker color. So I have added background color, border, width, height, margin, border radius, and overall margin. So let's go ahead and see these style in action. So now we see our calculator top part. So at least the output block and the top block is now coming in shape. And again, we will add some box shadow to it to make it look even more better. It's up to you if you want to add this box shadow or not. I like doing this because it gives a shadowy finish around the edges and it looks elegant. So let's go ahead and add style to our result class. We'll add style to our result class, in which we'll do a text align of right because it's a calculator. Everything is shown on the right side. And the font size we are looking for would be 45 pixels. And the padding we would be adding on the right side. Let's add a padding of 5 pixels. Save that. So because we wanted to do this to this paragraph tag, so that's why I just specifically added this so that these styles will get added to the paragraph tag. The next thing I want to do is something similar, but to the history part, which is nothing but this small number. So let's call it history. And here also we would like to do a text line. Font size should be a bit smaller, so it will be 20 pixels. And let's give it a color. Now let's go ahead and add some styles to the buttons which we have at the bottom side. So let's add some styles to that. So we added styles to the button. I have added border to none, some height and width, margin, a background color of dark one and the color of lighter one so that the buttons would look a bit 3D kind of a thing, and added some border radius, a font size and a font family to it. Let's go ahead and save this one, and you can see it is now looking good. Not very good, but good. And again, to give it the shadow style, we can go ahead and add the WebKit box shadow styles to it so that they look like real 3D buttons, which we see on the calculator. And right now you can see that they are like overlapping, so we are going to take care of that as well. So the next thing I would like to do is add the style for this red class so that ACCE buttons would be on the red color and not the gray color. So let's go ahead and do that. For the red class, we're just adding a background color of red. Along with that, we'll be adding a shadow, which will be complementing that red color. And that's it. You can see our two buttons are now perfectly aligned and looking good. So let's go ahead and fix our zero. Oh, it looks like our zero is no longer there. So I think I might have done some typo. Yep. And let's go ahead and add some styles to our zero class. It was, I think it was btn 0, and we'll add a position of relative because we would like to have the button floating under 1 and 2. And I'm going to increase the width of the button to 125 pixels. Let's see. Yep. And the same thing we are going to do for the equal button as well. So I would like to have the height of that button to cover two spaces of equal to like two buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll add another style called btn equal. In this, we will again do the same thing. We'll do the position of, instead of now relative, we'll be doing absolute because, and the next thing we would like to give it is like height of maybe 88 pixels because that's what the size is going to be. Yep. And we would like to add a style for, so let's go ahead and add style to our height class where we would like to hide a button which we created and it was like overlapping. So let's go ahead and set the display to none. I think we have done most of the styling done. So go ahead and save this, and also let's go ahead and you can see that there is the buttons overlapping with the calculator's body. So let's go ahead and increase this part so that the buttons are no longer like falling off the calculator. So let's go ahead and increase this height to 450, and yep, this is looking much better. Now that our application is looking good from the UI perspective, let's go ahead and add the JavaScript reference to our HTML file. So we'll be adding a jQuery reference to our file as well as an index.js which we are going to create now, and we'll start coding for that. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's create a file in this called index.js. Let me hide this one so that we have enough area to work with. To start the logic with calculation of calculator, the first thing we'll do is we'll use the jQuery document.ready event, and in this we'll be calling a function which will be an anonymous function in which we will be doing all our logic we'll be putting inside this function. So let's go ahead and define a couple of variables. The first variable we'll be defining will be the input string. This will hold the value of the buttons which we are going to press. So let's add some comments to this. Holds the value of button pressed. Similarly, we'll be adding a couple of more variables such as result, history, answer, maximum length of numbers which we will be using on the display, and the maximum length history which will be this part. So let's go ahead and add those variables. So now we are done with all our variables. Let's go ahead and start adding the event listener for click on the buttons. So we'll again grab all the buttons by using the jQuery, and we'll be attaching a function to the click event of all those buttons. In the function, we'll take the input variable, and inside this, we'll be adding the attribute value of the button pressed. Next, we would like to check the history. So let's call check history method, and this method we will use to check if the history limit is reached or not. So let's go ahead quickly and create our check history function. So check history function would be quite simple. So we'll create a function called check history. This will check for history's length. If that history's length is equal to the limit reached, then we would like to set the history to 0. So let's go ahead here and we will use our history variable, and we'll be checking if the value of that variable is equals to limit reached. This is the value which we'll be setting when we'll be calculating the arithmetic operation, and in between we will be checking if the length of our history is more than what it can show, that is like 21. If that is that, we'll be setting that here, and we'll be calling check history every time to see if we are like overflowing or not. If we are, then what I want to do is I want to set history to 0. So I would like this function to reset this value to back to 0. So to do that, let's go ahead and create this function. We'll call this function set history. Set history is going to take a value. So we'll call this variable argument as new history, and what it will do is it will take that history global parameter and it will be setting it with new value. And at the same time, we would like to set this value to the new value which we are setting to our history. So we are done with two functions, and these are going to be helper functions. So we are done with check history. So let's go ahead and add some more logic. So if we check this one, if the check history is there, we would like to erase the numbers from here and set it to 0. We'll check the result and the length of the result. If it is less than the max length, that is 9. That means we can show the calculation here, and our JavaScript calculator allows us to show only 9 digits. So we would like to make sure that whatever calculation we are doing here, we are not overflowing the number outside our calculator. So that's why we are trying to do this one. And the next thing we would like to do is we would like to check if the number is digit or not. So for that, we will use an inbuilt method in JavaScript, and this checks the input and tells you whether the given input is a number or not. So in this, we'll be passing the input value. If this is a number, we would like to check the answer. If the answer is blank, we'd like to go ahead and we would like to call a method called isDigit, and we'll pass the input to that. Let's go ahead and create that function as well for us. So isDigit, and it will be, and this method will take an input. Let's call it new digit. And what this method is going to do is that we will be checking if it's a 0 result or not. If it is, then we'll set the result to new digit. Also, we'll check if history is not equals to 0. Then I would like to go ahead and I'll call conc history. So I'll be concatenating the new number with the existing history so that user has the idea that what kind of arithmetic operation they are doing. So let's pass new digit to it. Else, what I want to do is I want to do set history again, and here we'll set the new digit because this is the first time the user has entered a number, and we would like to register that in the history. Similarly, else if, we will check sign. Why we are checking sign is because we want to make sure if this is not a digit, then it can be one of the arithmetic operations. So we would like to make sure that is it a sign or not. So if it is, then we would like to do set result, and we'll pass the new digit to it. And again, we will do a conc history. So we'll be concatenating the new digit to that history. That means we'll be just concatenating whatever mathematical operation user has selected. If that is not the case, then we would like to go ahead and we would like to use the conc result, which I will be creating in a minute. And same way we will be concatenating to the history again. So we are done with isDigit as well. So let's go ahead and fill in the rest of the methods which we have created. So let's create the function check 0 result, and here we would like to make sure that the results length, and here we would like to make sure that the result field only contains 0 or not. So what we will do is we will return the result dot length. If it is equals to 1, that means only one character is there. And also we would like to make sure that the results, that character at the 0th index is none other than 0. So that means this is the first time user is doing the operation. So this history value is set to 0. So we would like to, and the same thing we would like to do to the result as well. And if it is the first time, we would like to just append the new number in the result and in the history. So let's go ahead and save this one. So we got the check 0 result. We would like to create a set result as well. So let's go ahead and create a function set result. In this, we'll be setting the new result which we're getting to the result. Also, we'll be using some jQuery to set the value to the text of our paragraph equals to the new result value which we're getting. The next thing we would like to create is concatenate history function. So let's create that. And that concatenate history is going to take an input. So we'll call it new input. And in this, we'll be just concatenating the value of new input to the history string. And we'll call our set history method, which we created earlier, and we'll be passing our history string to that. The next thing we would like to create is concatenate result. So let's create that function as well. So it will be concatenating result, and in this we'll get new input, and let's just concatenate the result similar to the history, but it will be affecting the result section. So we'll call set result method, and we'll be passing the result as the parameter to that method. So we got the concatenating result, concatenating history, we got the set history, we also got set result, we already have check history, so and check zero result is also there. So most of the helper methods are done, but let's go ahead and keep coding so that we'll create more helper method if needed. Okay, so if the answer is blank, we will go ahead and check isDigit with the new input. Else, we would like to check again if it's not a number, and this time we will be checking the answer. And what we will be doing is we'll be creating a variable called current input, and to this we'll be appending the value of the input. I'll call a method called reset all, which will reset everything on the calculator. That is, the result will be reset to 0, as well as the history will also be set to 0. The second thing I would like to do is set result, and we'll be passing the current input to that. And the same way I'll call the set history, and we'll pass the current input to that. So let's create the reset all method, and this method is going to do exactly the same which you have thought. It is going to reset everything to the factory setting, so that will be equal to this. So what we can do is, like, let's copy this part and we'll get rid of a couple of, and I'll put it here. I'll get rid of these stuffs because we are not creating new variables, we're just setting the global variables here. And let's get rid of this. Additionally, we'll be setting the history to 0, and we'll be setting the result to 0 as well. So now we'll check if previously if this was a number, right? So we're doing appropriate action on that one. But if it is not a number, that means if it is either of these equal button or these buttons selected. So then we want to make sure that whether the dot was pressed by the user or not. So let's handle that. So to handle that, let's go ahead and add an if condition where we'll be checking the input, whether the input contains the dot or not. If it does, then we'll call a method which will be like check.exists. Why we'll be calling this is because we would like to make sure that the dot is used in the calculation only once. So you cannot have a number in which the decimal appears twice. So we'd like to make sure that this check is there. So let's go ahead and add a function called check.exist, and what I will do is minimize all these functions for brevity. And what we are going to do in this check.exist is that we'll be checking if the dot already exists in our result or not. we'll check if the dot was already inserted or not, and we'll look for dot in the result. If yes, then we'll do nothing, we'll exit. And if it is not, then we'll go ahead and add that to the result and the history and then exit. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing we'll do is we'll check if result, and we'll check the index of dot is less than 0. If it is, that means the dot is not present. So what we want to do is we want to concat the result with this input, that is the dot, and same thing we would like to do through history as well. So if this doesn't contains a dot, then it must be a sign, right? It's an operator which has been clicked. So let's go and check for that. So we'll do an else if again, and this time we'll check for the input if it is equals to divide, or the input is equals to multiplication or division or addition. So let me just copy this and paste it, and let's change the values and subtraction, and let's get rid of this thing. Yeah, so if that's the case, we'll check if 0 result is there or not, and we would like to make sure that the history is equals to 0. If that's the condition which is being met, this is like the first time we're getting the operator instead of number being pressed. So in that case, what we want to do is like we want to check the input, and we want to make sure that if it is negative, or if is it like the positive one. Because if user has clicked on that one, what we want to do is like set the result to input. Similarly, we want to do a set history with the input. But if this is a division, so that means the input is equals to a division. So in that case, we'll set the results to equal to input, and in the history we will concatenate the division to it. And yep, and else we'll just write return. And once we are done with that, let's go ahead and click, and we'll check for answer if it is like empty string. So here we'll check if the sign already exists in the result or not. Check if sign exists. So for that we'll do a method called check sign. So if it comes out as false, we would like to go ahead and concatenate the history with the input. The same way we'll set the result to input. Else, if the input is a negative one, and let's just go ahead and look into the history string, and we'll slice, and we'll take the last one, and in that we want to make sure that it is division or it's a multiplication. That's what we are checking for. So in that case, we just concat the history with the input, and we set the result equal to input. So that's that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and do another if where the answer does have something. So in that case, what I want to do is like if I want to make sure is answer is not a number. So if that happens, I would like to set the history to equal to answer plus input, and I'll set the result equal to input, and then we'll set the answer to blank. Now there is another condition in which we would like to check that if the user pressed equal button, then in that case we want to evaluate. So let's put a try catch block. Anything can go wrong, and we'd like to make sure that we do have proper error handling. So here what we'll do is like we'll set the answer equal to, we'll do math.round, and we'll use the eval function in which we'll put the history and we'll multiply that by 100 so that we are not missing the least significant number. And once we have evaluated it, we would like to go ahead and divide it back to 100 so that we get the original amount or the original answer. Now, in that, we would like to make sure that our answer's length, if our answer's length is more than the max length, or history where we are like keeping track of all the operations we have done. So in that case, what we'll do is that we'll check history and the answer, and if the length of the combined string is more than the max length of the history. So in both the cases, what we want to do is we want to call a method called limit reached, because we have either pressed too many buttons on the calculator, so the screen is now not having the enough capacity to show the numbers, or the history doesn't have enough capacity. So in that case, we'll call limit reached, and what we want to do is just return here. And let's go ahead and implement this limit reached function. We'll call this function limit reached. What this function is going to do is that it is simply going to set the result to 0, and history string we are going to set to limit reached. Remember, this history's limit reached value we have already used in check history, so this one will help us. And the next thing we would like to do is like reset the answer string, and we would like to use the set result method to set the result, and similarly we'll go ahead and set the history back to history. If we have not reached the max length or max length of the history, right? So in that case, we would like to set the result. So let's go ahead and set the result equal to answer, and plus we'll add a string to it, and we'll concatenate the history with equal sign. Otherwise, we'll just catch the error and we'll do a console log so we can see it in the console that what the error message is, and let's print that. And this error message is gonna be incomplete arithmetic operation. That's there. And if it's neither equal sign, it is none of the operators, it's not even a number, then we can safely assume that it's either AC or C button being pressed. So we would like to check for them as well. So let's go ahead and check the input value. If it is equals to AC, what we want to do is I think this needs to go outside here. Yeah, in this case, we'll just remember, we'll call the reset all, and we would like to set all the variables back to their factory setting. Similarly, we'll be doing an else if the input value is equals to CE. But in this case, there will be a catch where we will be checking for answer. If the answer is not empty, what we want to do is we want to reset everything. That's the case. But if it's not, then we would like to do. So if the answer is not calculated yet, what we would like to do is that allow the user to delete the last input which was typed. And if the user keeps clicking on the CE button, we would like to remove that value from the history string one by one. So That's what we'll be doing here. We'll be taking the history string and we'll be checking the length of that, and we'll be using the result and we'll be checking the length of the result. And if they don't match, so in that case, what I would like to do is I would like to set the history to history.substring, and we'd like to start with 0, and we would like to just remove the last operation which was keyed in by the user. Else I want to set the history back to 0. And then we'll go ahead and set the history with the updated history variable value, and we'll set the result to 0. Else we will again call the limit reached and we'll reset everything. So I think we are done. There is parenthesis missing, so I'll quickly run through it and I'll try to check where we missed it. Okay, so it seems like I forgot to keep the gap between the else if. And yeah, that's pretty much our logic, which is going to do all the calculation for our JavaScript. So let's save this one and let's see if this works or not. So I think we haven't implemented the check sign. So let's go ahead and quickly implement that function as well, because that helper method is going to identify which sign we are using. So let's call it check. And here we will just return true or false based on result dot length if that is equals to 1, and the result is either equals to a division or it's a multiplication, addition, or subtraction. So that's it. Now we have our checksign function in place and we have got all our helper method in place helping us. So let's go ahead and try to use our application. So let's do a simple maths and see if it works or not. Let's clear this. Let's do division. Okay, this also works. Can we do further? Yep. Let's try to go ahead and try to see if we can reach the limit. So let me multiply it by 900 and you see it says limit reached. So this is good. And let's check this CE button as well. So let's clear everything and let's do 89 divided by 6 minus 9 plus 6, and oops, accidentally I clicked on 6, whereas I was supposed to do minus 6 plus minus 6 multiplied by 7. So what I'll do is I'll clear 1, then I'll clear one more, then I'll do minus 6 multiplied by 8, and then I click on equal button, and there you go. This is giving us the correct value. So this was a fun project to work on, and where we created a simple calculator using a lot of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. If you guys really like this project, please like the video and subscribe to my channel so that it gives me confidence to put more videos on the channel. And definitely try this calculator. This is yours. Make modification to this and let me know in the comments if you came up with something even exciting, probably a scientific calculator. Till then, bye bye, and I'll see you in next video.